The world we know is gone. No Google, no Amazon.com, no email, no podcasts. In a world ruled by the dead, we're finally forced to start living.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Walking Dead TV podcast, episode 11. It's Vatos. This is John. I brought some zombies with me tonight. Who's here with me?
This is Russ.
This is Jordan.
And Brad.
Good evening, fellas.
Gak.
We're missing Mr. Dietz. Jim had a computer problem. It was kind of like a bad tech day for everyone. We lost our voicemail for a little while, so after I spent, a half hour begging for voicemails on Twitter, everybody yelled at me and said that they could not leave one. So we apologize for that, but we have that fixed, so the voicemail is ready to go. And we had a good show. Vatos delivered, I would say.
I agree. Yeah, big time.
Cool deal. So this is how we're going to start things off tonight. We have some voicemails that came in before Vatos aired, and we want to get to them. So we'll do that. We'll do some iTunes reviews, and then we'll get to the show. So here's our first voicemail.
Hey, it's Daryl. I'm enjoying the show, and it's just good that I can sit and listen to you guys talk about the show after I watched it. I always make sure I tell people, if you like the show, you would like this podcast. So I just watched episode 2. It's something how they changed because I've read just about all the trades. So it's just weird how it's good, though, how they change some things, but you don't know exactly how the story's going to turn out. I do like that. Only thing I did not like, I wasn't feeling the racist redneck guy pretty much manhandling 3 or 4 guys, and people in general, because I just don't see all those people being that scared of one. It didn't ring true. But other than that, it was still, I know that it was done to give Rick the chance to be, to show how, to give him that Captain America moment, to be the hero. But it would have been, I think it would have been better if what happened at the end of episode 2, I think it would have been more of an impact if it was a likable guy that they had to kind of do that to get away. It would have showed how horrible, all these situations you get put in and the things that you have to do. But other than that, I'm in the show. I love it. It's still a good show. It's disgusting as hell. So just take care, man. Good show. Y'all do a good job. So that's it. Later.
Very cool. Thank you, Daryl. Daryl's our buddy from many other podcasts. No Apologies, Nothing's On, Comic Book Roadshow. It goes on and on. You can check all his stuff out at forumforgeeks.com. What do you guys think about, I guess after Vatos, we'll get into it, but they keep building the myth of Merle. So it might have come off as a little strange maybe after Guts he's talking about, but now they continue to grow this, this legend of how tough Merle is. So I think it's building to something.
No, yeah, I would say so. I kind of like that. They didn't just dump him into the episode so we can see what's going on. That they kind of are leaving it hanging to where we're wondering, what's going on, what's he doing, what's he up to. So I thought that was a good move.
There was a question early on from a lot of people all over the place of why in the world would you bring Merle with you on your venture into the city? I think now we know, he might be slightly unstable, but both him and his brother, they are tough sons of guns. I'd want them on my side in a fight, even if they are jerks. They're still they're very powerful, and man, can they kill some zombies.
The other thing I wanted to address from Daryl's voicemail was he mentioned how he was enjoying that they were changing so much from the comic, and I think we all agree. There have been some tweets and stuff saying that some comic fans are pissed that they're going off in their own direction, but I really wouldn't want to know what's happening every step of the way.
Yeah, me either. I've said it before on the show. I've said it on our other show, Legion of Dudes, that I don't necessarily want to see a direct one-to-one, word-for-word, shot-for-shot translation of really anything. I think it's important to keep the beats. It's important to get the characters down. But to me, I want to see something different. I want to see something that I don't want to know what's around every corner. I don't want to know what's ahead of everything going on. I want to be surprised. I want to have some reason to watch this other than knowing what's coming. So I appreciate it. I really do.
Definitely. There's some comics, there's some stories for sure that you need certain plot points to happen in a certain way because, there's a metaphor there or there's something that's integral to the story. But The Walking Dead is different from a lot of comics and stories in that it's more about just those individual characters and what they have to go through. It doesn't matter if, 10% of the trials are different as long as they're still being put through those trials and tested as human beings.
All right, so thanks again, Daryl, and here's another quick one.
Hey guys, this is Melissa, the girl of Mayhem, and I just wanted to call and give you some feedback on the Walking Dead podcast. I just want to let you guys know I really appreciate the style in which you do your recap. It's really similar to mine. You guys are really detailed in them, which is something I strive for on the Girl of Mayhem podcast, which is of course Weapons of Vanity. So it's really nice to listen to a podcast such as yours about a show I'm not so familiar with and really get that detail. I also want to tell you guys how much I appreciate how hard you guys work, and I know how difficult it is to get a podcast out right after a show airs. So I don't blame you guys at all for switching to recording on Sundays to Mondays. It's a tough job, and it's one that you don't really get paid for, so I totally understand that. I also wanted to note that I'm surprised at how many people are new to the concept of The Walking Dead, myself included. But it's interesting to hear all your feedback and all these people saying that they didn't read the books either, so I don't feel so alone, so that's really cool as well. I want to make a note. You guys mentioned in one of the podcasts, and I forget this one because I kind of did a marathon yesterday, so you guys were talking about how people may switch their allegiance to characters, like they like them now, but they might not like them later and vice versa. And I really think that's the mark of a good show, and so I'm really interested to see where the show goes, and if it does that exact thing where you kind of switch which characters you care more about or like or dislike. And I just want to mention, I found you guys, of course, through Twitter. I believe I tweeted something about the show, and you guys started following me, and we had a great conversation, so thank you so much for being interactive with your fans, and I know I appreciate everything you do, and I'm sure all the other listeners do too. Great job, guys. Talk to you soon.
Thank you very much.
Wait a second.
Yeah.
Did she say we're not getting paid for this?
We are not getting paid for this.
Whatever.
You're so high paid on your other shows, I could understand your disappointment.
Yeah, the check is in the mail.
So that is Melissa from the Girl of Mayhem podcast, as she mentioned, which is a very cool Sons of Anarchy show. We've mentioned it a bunch of times, and we thank her for her voicemail. I definitely think that there's going to be some allegiance switching as far as fans go. There's so many gray area characters. I mean, we talked about it a little bit with Irony Singleton last show, and if anybody's listening for the first time here, you might want to go back at least one show and hear our interview with T-Dog himself, Mr. Irony Singleton. He's just one example. There's so many characters that could go either way right now that I could see flip-flopping a lot.
Yeah, me as well. Especially they're going to bring more characters in, and as the tension ramps up, as they bring, I'm sure they're going to bring more in, and they're going to interact with other people. The way that certain characters will probably, react to new characters coming in or them, interacting with these other characters. I imagine the way that they are now and all civil with each other may not turn out that way. And that's not foreshadowing anything from the book, but just knowing the way the show's going and knowing, what's to come.
Alrighty then. Russ, how about some iTunes reviews, and then we'll get into Vatos.
Sounds good. We got actually a bunch of iTunes reviews. So first of all, I want to thank everybody that took the time out to go onto iTunes and to not only just leave us a rating, but write a little blurb for it too. That helps a lot. And we've had awesome response. So for those of you that haven't, it just takes a minute. Pop on over to iTunes and leave us a review. So the first one is from Harley Big Daddy, and this is by far the best Walking Dead podcast out. You want a complete and thorough review of each episode, great commentary. These are your guys. Each episode is great information, sheds light on the story without giving away anything via spoiler info from the books. Don't forget to follow the Walking Dead podcast at Twitter at WDTV Podcast. Keep up the great work, guys. Awesome.
Yes, yeah, big Twitter supporter as well. So thanks to him. And that's just, we're trying to build a little community here, and it's going really well. Big Harley Daddy is from, the Sons of Anarchy group, and we're all kind of commiserating now, and a lot of them are watching Walking Dead, and we're meeting them on Twitter and stuff, and it's a good deal.
The next iTunes reviews is from Ed H. Rez, and it just says, "Where's episode 9? WTF?" So obviously he was wanting his fix, and so by now this will be episode 11. So hopefully we cranked out 10 fast enough for you there.
Yeah, I think 9 and 10 came out in pretty rapid succession, so we may be late again. You never know, but sorry.
Next one is our friend, the Girl of Mayhem, who we just heard from. This is a very well done podcast where the hosts are very knowledgeable about the topic. All of the hosts are well spoken and have something to contribute. The sound quality is very good. I found the universe view so far fascinating. As someone who's only seen a handful of zombie movies and never read the comics, I have to say that I've learned a lot. I enjoy Walking Dead immensely, and this podcast only enhances my view on the show. Check it out for sure if you watch the show or read the graphic novels.
She's talking all about you, Brad.
Absolutely.
Is he fumbling for the mute button, or did he fall asleep?
No, I'm here. I'm sorry, I wasn't listening.
Next. All right, next one is from Steve OU2. This is becoming one of my favorite podcasts out there. I love the structure of the show. You guys really know what you're doing. I appreciate that you guys mention the books, but don't spoil anything. I'm a newbie to the Walking Dead world, so I don't know anything about the books, so adding this podcast to the show is awesome. I'll keep listening to the show between the break, and once again, thanks. So rather than to go on and just seem like we're being overly self-aggrandizing, I'll just leave it to say that we've got a bunch of 5-star reviews from the Crippled Avenger, which is Lucas, our fellow listener and forumite from the Handycast, and he's been a big supporter of our podcasts from day one. So thank you there. Loki Beat, another 5-star review. Joe Jans, another 5-star review. Again, another one of our kind of old listeners from way back when. And 80s Junkie, Mr. Dennis, thanks again for the 5-star review. So we really appreciate those guys. It helps us get noticed. It helps the show get out there, and we really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, and one last thing before we start talking about the episode. The Podcast Awards nominations have closed. We appreciate everybody. It doesn't really matter whether we get nominated or not. We just want to thank everybody that did. I know from Twitter that some people had mentioned that they did throw us in for some nominations. So thanks to all those guys, and you never know.
Do you have your speech prepared, John, for if something happens?
I do, but I have to consume a lot of alcohol, and it has to be on like a rated R show.
Should I get my tux dry cleaned, do you think?
It's probably time. You haven't worn it since the prom.
Good point.
Let's do some vatos.
All right, vatos. Did anybody do any? And I'm embarrassed that I don't know what vatos means. Is it just like dude?
Yeah. I guess it's a like Hispanic slang for buddy, dude, guy, friend, whatever.
Vatos was written by Robert Kirkman. I don't know about you guys, but this really felt to me like even more so like an episode, like an issue of The Walking Dead than the previous episode. Maybe because it was penned by Robert Kirkman.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so we start with Andrew and Amy fishing, and they're talking about they're picking on each other because they're both fishing a certain way that the other one has a question about. Like, why are you doing that? Dad taught us this way. And they're like, no, Dad taught me this way. Why are you doing it that way? So long story short, it turns out in the middle of this sisterly bonding, they realized that their dad each taught them a certain way to fish based on their personality. Andrea was the go-getter. It was all about setting the hook and getting the fish and capturing it. And Amy was all about catch and release. So, he understood his daughters, and he based, they're 12 years apart, we find out. So he based his schooling of them, pardon the pun, in the fishing, ways of fishing, depending on their personality. So they have some bonding about that. They start to wonder, Mom and Dad were in Florida. I wonder if it was as hard as it is here. And then they start to get emotional, no crying. Don't forget the no crying in the boat rule. And one of them says, I have a feeling that was more for Dad than it was for us. So that little scene ends with this beautiful wide shot from way up above of this huge pond that they're in. Beautiful blue pond, the small little boat. The camera tilts up and pans over to the left, and we see Dale standing on the RV, ever vigilant, watching for everything. He trains his binoculars on Jim, who's up on a hill, and he's digging. We can tell he's digging. We cut to Jim, and we see that he's digging a bunch of holes in the ground that appear to be graves. They could be graves. We don't know. There's a bunch of holes, but I took it to be graves.
The way they were like long ways, they seem to be graves right away. I don't know if we were supposed to be guessing, but I didn't think he was like planting trees or anything. I don't know what else you come up with besides graves.
Yeah.
Don't you guys remember it's Arbor Day?
Yeah, that's the first thing I thought it was graves.
Going back to the Amy and Andrew scene, did that work for everybody?
It worked because of Kirkman's writing style. And again, I think maybe my bias kind of came in a good way, because that's definitely the back and forth, the kind of banter, that almost Bendis style of writing to me just fit well. And knowing how the episode ended, I think it's one of those where when you get to the end, because of the emotional setup at the beginning, it hits you like a sledgehammer. So to me, it was brilliant.
I had no problem with the writing. I think it was more some of the acting, mostly from Amy in the scene. I didn't buy some of the lines, and they were written fine. And I understand certainly the emotional significance of the scene, why it was important. But even on my second watch of the episode, because I read a couple reviews and stuff that really liked the scene, and I was like, okay, I just must have missed it. And I don't know, parts of it did not work for me. Others were really good, but it was inconsistent.
All right, so then we have our lovely open that we've all come to know and love. Jordan, did you notice anything different about the music on this one?
I listened to it. I didn't pick any out, and there's nothing in the blog this week about it. But I figured at the end of the season, I'll probably cut the audio from all 6 and play them back to back and see what I can find.
Yeah, I did not notice anything as well.
He did have an interesting note, though, that most of the music for this episode was in 13/8, which is kind of a bizarre musical time signature for anybody who's a musician out there.
Yeah, that is pretty bizarre, actually. The most bizarre one I've ever heard about. Never mind. We could talk about music theory all day.
We're not here to talk about musical theory.
All right, so after the open plays, we go to commercial, and then we pick back up in Atlanta with our heroes. And this scene picks up right where episode 3 leaves off. We see Myrtle's hand. We see the cuffs dangling. And, of course, Daryl's pissed. He turns and points his crossbow right at T-Dog's head. And Rick immediately puts his pistol to Daryl's head. Says, I won't hesitate. Daryl thinks about it a bit, lowers his crossbow, and asks T-Dog for a do-rag or something. And he ends up wrapping his brother's hand in it. And I think it might even have been Daryl that said the saw blade was too soft for the cuffs.
Yeah,
yeah. So and we had wondered about that. I know maybe not on air, but I know off air in emails perhaps we had talked about that. So they did address that. Here it is, another example of them actually addressing things that people like us would wonder. So that's cool.
It's really amazing how it happens a show later every time. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, things that happened in episode 2 that we were worried about, they're like addressed in episode 3, and now they're addressing what happened in 3 and 4, and it's almost like we're getting baited. Like, let's see if we can make the internet boys, try to poke holes in our plot, and then we'll just give them the answer the next show. It's probably not that, but that's how it seems.
No, I would agree. It does seem like that. It's happened more than once. Let's put it that way. All right, so we pick up. Pardon me. So I don't remember if I said this. Daryl puts the hand in Glenn's backpack. Glenn does not look too thrilled about it. T-Dog picks up Dale's tools while Rick and the rest follow Merle's blood trail. Then we cut back to camp. Jim is digging. Dale arrives and says, "Are you okay, dude? Here, have some water." Jim looks at Dale, doesn't say anything, goes back to digging. At this point, Dale starts to look a bit concerned and confused. I'm not sure which one is the more of, though. And he wanders off. These are some quick cuts. The story is happening in little chunks, back and forth, which is interesting. I think it kind of keeps the pace going pretty good. We'll cut back to downtown. They're making their way down some stairs. Daryl is in the lead. He puts an arrow in a zombie's head. A wicked, gross zombie, by the way. Probably one of the grossest zombies yet on the show, don't you think?
Yeah, they had highlighted that one. I'm going to say on the website where they showed some close-ups, or it might have been a third-party website that just had gotten some preview images, and they showed how, like, her tongue was blown out of her. I guess she was missing her bottom lip and, like, part of the jaw, and so her tongue is just kind of, like, hanging out.
Yeah, it almost looked like she didn't make it out of Jigsaw's first trap that we ever saw in the very first Saw movie, the one that rips the jaws open.
Mm-hmm. Also reminded me of there's a scene in The Grudge or The Grudge 2 where one of the ghosts is missing her lower jaw. That always freaked me out as a kid.
I will thank you never to mention The Grudge again.
I wasn't a big fan of the movie, but that one particular scene did freak me out.
Well, that's the scariest movie I've ever seen is The Grudge.
Oh, okay. I thought you were saying it's crappy. I was like, okay.
No. It literally scared me out of my seat. I'm not exaggerating. At one point in the movie, I jumped out of my seat, landed in the woman's lap next to me, and screamed like a girl.
Wow. The movie didn't scare me at all. What scared me more was the fact that Jordan prefaced all this with "when I was a kid."
Well, I was like 13 or 14 or something.
Oh, much to learn they have.
I stand by my statement.
So they get to the bottom of the stairs, and Daryl puts an arrow in the zombie's head, the wicked gross one that I mentioned, and he makes a comment about how tough his brother is because he had, he even though he's losing blood one-handed, he still took out 2 zombies, and he says something to the effect of, "Feed him a hammer and he'd crap out nails."
Yeah, this is part of that legend of Merle that we were talking about during Daryl's voicemail, that they're just kind of building up. And Rick's kind of the doubting Thomas, he's like, oh, he's not that tough. If he loses blood, he'll pass out like any other man. He keeps throwing these, Daryl keeps throwing the comments in, and Rick keeps answering them. But I think we're going to find out just how tough Merle is pretty soon.
All right, so we cut back to camp. Amy and Andrea wander back into camp with a stringer full of juicy fish. They had great success when they went fishing. And Carl says, "Wow." And his mom grosses out. "Yeah, I see them. They're fishy. Get them away from me." She says, Amy says, "We'll teach you, Carl, if that's okay with your mom." She says, "Yeah, you're not going to, I don't have a problem with it."
One of the things I thought about with that scene was the balance between what she told Shane. Like, she didn't want Shane, around, and she didn't want Carl around Shane with her. She wanted to make sure that Carl was always within her grasp, or that Dale had an eye on her. And so here comes Andrea and Amy, and they're like, "Oh, we'll take you fishing. We'll show you how." And she's like, "Yeah, sure, no problem." So again, I took it as more that tension between her and Shane.
Who's the dad?
Morales?
Morales, is that his name?
I believe so.
I thought that was kind of just a cool touch that, when he went on about how my kids will eat tonight, because of you, and I thank you for that. I don't know, something about that scene I just appreciated. It gave a little bit more of like a real touch to how big a deal it was that they, caught fish.
So about this time, Dale wanders back into camp and he says, "I don't want to alarm anybody, but we may have a small problem." He points up to the hill, and Jim is off in the distance digging. We cut back to Atlanta. The fellows are still following the trail of blood, and they made it to the bottom floor, and they end up in some kind of kitchen or something. And it turns out, there's still some flames on the stove, and somebody's been doing something. And Rick, after some investigation, says it looks like Merle has cauterized his wound. His stump. I think he says his stump. And this is when Daryl says, "Told you he was tough. No one can kill Merle but Merle." Yeah, Daryl obviously has a lot of faith in his brother.
He sure does. Those were actually sternos that he found and lit, I think, and left around to heat up that. It's kind of hard to tell. It's kind of like a flat surface, like almost like a cake server or something.
I think that was an old-fashioned iron.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think before they had electric irons.
Yeah, I think Jordan's right. So, obviously, Daryl is still worried about his brother. Rick says, "We'll go look for him," and T-Dog says, "Only if we get the guns first." So we cut back to camp. Dale, Shane, and some of the group go check on Jim. Shane says, "Dude, you're scaring us. Why don't you take a break? Kind of worried about you." Jim says, "Dude, I'm just digging. I'm not getting in anybody's face. Leave me alone. I'm just digging. What's the problem?" Shane says, "You better give me the shovel before I have to take it from you." Why? So it turns out, long story short, Shane takes the shovel, knocks Jim down, and handcuffs him. I thought it was interesting that Shane's got his handcuffs on him.
Yeah, this whole scene was kind of interesting. He brings up Ed, who got his face beat in by Shane earlier, so there's consequences for that. I thought Shane handled it really well, which is interesting too, because they've kind of made him a jerk up to this point, but now he's kind of showing that he's useful in this camp still, especially with Rick, going off and doing superhero things.
Yeah, Shane started to kind of get more on the positive side for me after this episode, and just the way he handled Jim and tried to be stern with him, but still treat him like a human, like he's part of the group, and that they really do care about him. So I thought that was an interesting sequence.
The rest of the scene, I don't know, there's something about it. It's just kind of eerie to me. Jim's on the ground, Shane's on top of him trying to calm him down, says, "Nobody's going to hurt you, Jim. Nobody's going to hurt you." And Jim says, "It's a lie. It's a big lie. That's what I told my family. Look what happened to them. The only reason I got away is because the dead were too busy eating my family." Man, that would mess you up if you saw that happen to your family.
Mm-hmm.
Which obviously explains a lot about what's going on in Jim's head right now.
Yeah, and he does some more and says some more creepy things later on that I won't bring up now. I'll let you get to them. But yeah, he's definitely not right anymore.
All right, so at this point, we cut back to Atlanta. They're having a powwow in which Glenn is outlining a plan for retrieving the bag of guns that was still out there in the street. And Daryl obviously is somewhat impressed by this, and he says, "Hey, Glenn, what did you do before all this happened?" He says, "I was a pizza delivery driver," which sheds a little light on Glenn's ability to navigate the streets of Atlanta. I thought that was pretty cool.
That was awesome. With the way Glenn was mapping that all out and just basically telling him this is how it's going to be, and he's thinking 2 steps ahead and everything else. And then when they asked him what he was, and he said pizza delivery boy, and they just look shocked, and he's like, "What?" He doesn't get it. He doesn't get it how cool he really is and how much of a tactician he is and how much he impressed them with his with what he did. I thought that was just really brilliant. I think Glenn again is one of the characters in the show that I think is brilliantly cast, and I think he's doing an awesome job.
Have any of you read the book Snow Crash But it's kind of the book that one of the first books to bring in. It's called Cyberpunk. That style writing.
Yeah.
But the hero's name, the main character's name is Hero Protagonist, and he's a delivery man who reminds me kind of Glenn in that scene.
I thought it was interesting. I'm sorry, Brad. I thought it was interesting how we talk about gray area characters all the time. You have T-Dog and Daryl, who are kind of like these alpha male. Certainly, Daryl is all hot and bothered by this whole thing with his brother and everything. But like they sat attentively and listened to Glenn, and they were like visibly impressed by what he was telling them. It's just an interesting dynamic. You can't put a finger on any of these characters. I was expecting Daryl to stand up and be like, "This is stupid. We can't do it that way. We got to do it my way," type of thing. But they just keep surprising me how they act.
Yeah.
I didn't care for Glenn's portrayal at first, but because I didn't think he didn't come across to me as anything like the character I was used to from reading the books. But I would say I'm officially a Glenn fan now. I think he really, like Russ said, he really kind of badassed it up. You might not use that word, but that's what you're.
Yeah.
One of us.
So Glenn and Daryl head off in one direction. Rick and T-Dog head off in the other direction. Glenn and Daryl make it to the fence line, and Glenn leaves the safety of the fenced-in area to go grab the bag of guns, and he starts attracting zombies' attention. Daryl stays behind on guard and meets the first Vato, who ends up, his name is, didn't he end up being named Miguel?
Miguel or Miguelito, which would be Mike or Little Mike.
Yeah. And immediately, Miguel starts yelling, "Ayúdame," which means help me in Spanish.
I was wondering what that meant. He kept yelling at him. I'm like, is that gibberish or is that a phrase?
I thought he was saying, "Are you the man?" I'm not saying
He's saying, "Ayúdame." He's yelling, "Ayúdame." In Spanish, that means help me.
it makes sense. I just didn't understand it when it was happening.
These guys need to spend more time in the South,
Obviously.
obviously.
Ayúdame, help me.
Russ, I'll have you know I found my way through 2 semesters of Spanish in college. Thank you very much.
So he's attracting the attention of his friends. Here comes more of them. Glenn, in the meantime, is trying to get back inside the fence. The second and third Vatos come running up to help Miguel. They tackle Glenn because he's holding the bag. Daryl, after receiving a beating from Vatos 2 and 3, he ends up shooting one in the leg with his crossbow. So more Vatos drive up on the other side of the fence in a car. They leave the bag of guns because it's fallen on the ground. They take Glenn and hop in the car and they drive away.
I think he was shot in the posterior.
Yeah, I think you're right, actually. In the lower buttock.
Yes.
Which I have a great theory someone passed on to me that I will relate about that later on in the episode.
Cool. Rick and T-Dog catch up. Glenn has been kidnapped, and then they all end up and leave with Miguel in tow. They've got their own prisoner. As we hear later, they got one of theirs, and we have one of yours. So, commercial. We come back, and now we're back at camp. Jim is sitting on his lower buttock tied to a tree. Shane walks up, gives him some water and a pep talk. Pours some water on his head. Jim at this point is starting to calm down a bit, and he addresses Carol and Lori, who are homeschooling their kids at the picnic table. He says, "Sorry, I scared your kids." Dale comes up and says, "Why were you digging?" Jim says, "Well, I had a reason, but I don't remember. Something I dreamt, I think." He ends up talking to Carl a little bit, says, "Your dad's tough. He's going to be fine."
When Jim starts talking to Carl and Lori kind of steps in and says, "I don't think you should be talking about that," or whatever, I had a moment of Holly Hunter from Raising Arizona when the prisoners come and they start saying something and she just kind of snaps at him like, mind your business, or whatever she says to him. I'm like, that's inappropriate or whatever. It just, I don't know why. It just struck me.
It's another creepy Jim moment there when he's talking to Carl.
Yeah.
You want to, as a viewer, and a human being, you want to believe that Jim he's going to be okay. You want to believe he's kind of realizing what he's done. Maybe he's calming down. But yeah, the way he was talking, not necessarily for me, not necessarily the way he was looking at Carl, but just his general attitude and presence of mind. It was a little creepy thing when he was talking to Carla. So we cut back to Atlanta. Rick and company are interrogating Miguel. He's not cooperating. Daryl gets the idea to show him Merle's hand. Says, "This is what I did to the last guy who crossed me," which I thought was brilliant. Just brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
That to me, though, says a lot about him and his brother, or maybe at least just him, that they talk a big game, and we've definitely seen that they're very adept at killing zombies, but they might not be quite the badasses that they make themselves out to be. You know what I mean? Where it's like they'll use the situation and whatever's at hand to make themselves seem more powerful than they actually are.
I think that might be just the theme of this episode in general, is posturing.
Oh, yeah, good point.
Yeah, definitely.
Daryl, it just struck me when you said how good they were at killing zombies. They totally remind me of Woody Harrelson in Zombieland now that you mention it. They kind of like redneck, great
Zombie kill of the week right there.
Yeah.
After conferring a little more, they decide to go back to the Vatos' place to make a trade. Guillermo for Glenn.
Miguel.
Thank you. I'm looking at my notes here. To make a trade. Miguel for Glenn. They approach the place, and the head Vato comes out. His name is Guillermo. He says, "No to the offer. Where are my guns?" Rick says, "They're not your guns. They're mine. You're mistaken." Guillermo, turns out, has Glenn on the roof. And with the implication that if you my guns, we will throw your buddy off the roof. You come back with Miguel and my guns, or you come back locked and loaded, and we'll see who sheds more blood. That was a nice little surprise seeing T-Dog up on the roof.
Yeah, sniping, you mean? Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
I also like how he was an unwilling participant in that. He was hoping that everything was just going to go smooth and he wouldn't have to do anything. And he kept, I forget what his exact words were, but it was just like, please let everything be okay. Please let everything be okay. He didn't want to have to pull that trigger. So I thought that was interesting. Here you got this big guy and, very commanding presence when he's on screen, but yet, he really doesn't. It's one thing to knock off a bunch of zombies and protect yourself that way, but he really doesn't want to have to shoot another human.
I think he was saying something like, make the trade.
Yeah.
So everybody leaves, keeping their back away from each other. They go back, they regroup, and Rick says he's not leaving Glenn there because Glenn helped him out when he was stuck in the tank. He could have left. Glenn didn't. I'm not going to leave Glenn. After him and Holland, the rest decide, we're going to stay and help Rick. So they head back, ready to shoot it out. Rick ain't giving him the guns, but he's not going to sit there and just let him have Glenn. This is where the only complaint I have in the story of this episode. This Deus, how do you say this? Deus Ex Machina?
Deus Ex Machina.
Thank you. I don't speak French. Deus Ex Machina shows up in the form of Guillermo's abuela, which is grandmother in Spanish.
I thought it was Felipe's grandmother.
I took it as
they were all just calling her grandma.
Yeah, I think I just took it was generic. Like she's the old woman. They just call her abuela just because she's somebody's grandmother, and they're taking care of her. I could be maybe I just didn't pay attention to the fine points, but I just took it as kind of the generic, respectful. That's just what they call her.
Yeah, I don't know for a fact. I was assuming it was somebody's grandmother, but I have a feeling you're probably correct, especially in light of what we discover here in a couple minutes. She sees Rick. She says, "Who's that?" Long story short, she ends up taking Rick by the hand to take him to the Asian boy, and Rick finds out that all these vatos, these tough Mexican dudes, are just protecting the residents of an old folks' home that the staff ended up abandoning when the zombie apocalypse happened. And this is the one thing about the episode that screamed Robert Kirkman to me. When a situation has presented itself and you assume it's going to go one way, and then boom, it does a 180, and you turn out that nothing is as it seems.
Yeah, I had a lot of mixed emotions in the scene. At first, I really liked the tension that was building up. Who was going to blink? And when the old woman came in, and then it was like, oh, they're taking care of these old folks. I kind of was like, wah wah, and it seemed like a little hokey to me. But by the end, the way that Guillermo explained it and the way that he talked about it made a lot more sense to me. And I was like, okay, I can buy that, because basically what they're saying is even if we're not really willing to go through with it, we have to make everybody think that we're going to go through with this, because if we don't toughen up and man up, that we're going to get bulldozed over and all these people are going to die.
I think it's a scene that really has to play out. Like when like I said, when they're having that standoff and the grandmother comes out, the first reaction is like, what? These gangster guys are gonna have this. But then as it goes on, you find out they're not gangster guys. They're janitors and nurses and basically the staff of the hospital that are picking up other people that want to help them out. The only thing that didn't ring true for me was, why would they kidnap Glenn? Like, that didn't seem like, well, I guess you could say that they wanted the guns, right? But for a group that really was just putting up the front for being tough guys to protect themselves, it seemed like a little extreme that they would kidnap Glenn. But I guess the guns are that. Like I say in the episode, the guns are gold, right? So.
Well, not only that, but they don't know those guys. They don't know Rick and his crew. And I think that was kind of a hedge as well. It was the guns and a hedge. They're bad, because if those guys came in and wanted to raid their supplies and raid their medicine and raid whatever else, they had that kind of ace in the hole, which was Glenn. So I think it was kind of a double, way to cover themselves in two different ways.
Rick looks at Guillermo and he says, "Dude, we were ready to come in here and kill every last one of you." And it goes back to what Russell said earlier about the theme of this show, this episode, is about being something you're not, or trying to put up a front and pretend you're something that you're not. So I liked the scene, and I didn't have a problem with it, other than Grandma appearing out of nowhere. But it ended up making sense to me, kind of like John said. So after talking it out with Guillermo, Rick agrees to give him some guns to help with the protection of the old folks. And Rick and everybody start to walk back to where they left their van and find it's gone. And somebody's like, "Why would anybody want to take this, or who would have taken it?" And Rick says, "Merle took it." And Daryl says, "Oh, I feel sorry for your people at the camp, because Daryl's going to take out his anger on them." Merle, thank you. Why couldn't they be like David and Jonathan? Something easy to remember.
Frank and Brad.
Right, exactly. I was going to go there, but then I thought, no, that's a bit self-aggrandizing. I can't say that word.
French again.
Yes. So we cut back to camp at this point. Angela is rummaging around the Winnebago looking for wrapping paper of some kind to wrap Amy's gift, because tomorrow is her birthday. The gift, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't it that little necklace thing that she took in episode 2?
Yep.
Yeah, it's that mermaid she was picking out while the zombies were banging on the door.
Right. Shane's talking to Jim. I hope you understand why we had to do this. Jim really, even more, seems to be in control of himself, and says, "Hey, I get it. I understand. I'm cool." Shane lets him up, says, "Why don't you come and enjoy the fish fry with us?" We cut to Ed's tent, where Carol and Sophia are bringing him some water, and she says, "Why don't you come join us?" And he says, "Screw you, screw them. I'm staying here in the tent." He's obviously, his pride is hurt. Man, his face was messed up.
Yes. Okay, real quick. Did you think they were alluding to the fact that there was something very wrong going on